So as of this recording, I have read 1,081 chapters of Detective Conan. We are caught up. I've actually read more than that, as I will explain. Yes, I have secretly obtained unpublished chapter. No. Wait, getting into, well, I guess, yeah, spoilers is what I'm curious enough about to think about, but not enough to actually go check and see presumably cringe takes, because for me, having caught up to Conan, recently, I would say like the last 20 volumes were probably my favorite, had some of my favorite stuff in the manga, but the last 20 volumes I feel like are also like, such a relatively recent part that, Conan fans would have been caught up for a while, right? Like to compare to One Piece, which I think reached 100 volumes quicker. Like volume 80 was just like the start of like Whole Cake Island and the end of Dressrosa, right? Like very much well within like the memories of lots of people who've been reading the manga, I think. So that means people who are caught up to Conan, and actually no, yeah, because Conan's also had hiatuses. So no, 80 volume Conan definitely came out before the 80th volume of One Piece. I'm pretty sure. I'm not gonna go check right now. Sorry, but so that means weekly reading, weekly brain rot, and again, this isn't something I'm not guilty of or haven't been guilty of, because I'm like reading a bunch of series and I honestly like am not super invested in all of them every single chapter, and there's a bunch of series that like when I finish an arc or when they finish I'm probably gonna reread, even though I like, because I like it like week to week, but yeah. But with Conan, I got I got to catch up as it was going recently, so there's just a part of me that wonders, like, are people just like, because I know Aoyama's writing style. I've just read 100 volumes over the course of the last like 4 or 5 months, and he likes to leave plot threads hanging and dangle them and maybe touch on them a little bit, and then he'll go, haha, just kidding, I didn't advance on this at all. But then sometimes he will advance a little bit, and that's part of the engagement, I guess. Like, I was really glad that we actually did get to see Rum's identity, because I feel like when I like started the reading, it was like Rum, and who is it? They're building up to that, and look, they're building up to something big. What'll probably be, I feel like because like there's Rum, and then there's presumably the leader of the organization, and Conan's the silver bullet who's going to bring them all down. So like I guess Rum would be a big climax, and then that would probably like be the hypothetical end of Act 2 to lead into the last part of the fucking story. Which of course it could still be a slow burn. It is Conan of cases and stuff, but like we're already at the point where I feel like it's hard to find cases that don't add to something in some way. Like there are so many. This motherfucker is still introducing new characters. Like Chihaya, the motorcycle cop lady. I'm pretty sure she's new. Which of course with me and just like there's a lot of characters, and like I've even seen more going back, and so I don't necessarily have all of them straight. So I am prone to making mistakes. I am human, and I'm not the most invested in Conan. Also, I imagine like with the anime with like voices and colors, it might be easy to tell, because there's so many fucking characters. Like, what, you didn't know Chihaya showed up in the background of like fucking chapter 350? Like, I didn't notice. I'm sorry. Like even when I started Conan, we Haibara's sister came up. When they mentioned the name, I was like, but then when we saw her, I was like, oh, that girl, like, right? Because there's just so many. I'm not gonna keep all these fucking names straight. Sorry. So yeah, I was glad that I got like some resolution with what I read. Because Rum got revealed, and I was like, fuck, it was the sushi guy. So because I think I've mentioned it before, but I do sometimes worry with like the slow burns that like when the reveal actually happens, I just won't give a shit. And that did happen to a bit with like Akai, because he died, and I was like, he's not dead, and he's not dead. He's back, he's alive, he's very much around, and it's like yep. But other times it did work. So let's see. I did forget to mention, speaking of Kai, like Sarah is, we've learned her and her mother, who was also aged down. Didn't predict that one, I guess, but I know now. And like, see, this is what, like, there's so many like characters who even know, like Conan asked fucking Amuro, Bourbon, Ray, whatever, Zero, whatever you want to fucking call him, that like, are you an enemy? And like, they know, and he knows, and but like he's a cop also, but like I'm just, and then he doesn't know about Akai, they're at odds, and it's like, Rum knows, and then like there's the fucking old guy who might have been Rum, but is apparently I think he said something that implied that he's in the organization, and there's also the teacher. I'm pretty sure they're in the organization, but he knows that Conan is actually behind Mori, and she's fucking weird, and totally not evil, but she's creepy, and just like she plays off the clumsiness, but she's actually like super confident, like she's right there. This is dangerous. Like there's just so many like little things, and there was the encounter with the organization and Camel being on the island in particular. It's just a part that that part that was good. But like when everything just starts blowing up, like I feel like that's what the series is building to, because Aoyama has to recognize that like he can't do it forever. So I would expect that he's building up to some big climax, and that'll sort of work towards the eventual end of the series. So like and it's just a slow burn, and it's a long manga, and it's still got a fair ways to go. I have no idea how long it will be, obviously, but it's so yeah, like I said, I guess I could understand why a weekly reader would be maybe frustrated, but I mean, again, having caught up recently, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied. It's good stuff. I did forget to mention that Sarah, I like how she says case closed, which is a cute nod to the English localization title, which was the first I became aware of the series, even though I didn't touch it at the time. Oh yeah, there was speaking of like little advancements, like I mentioned earlier, Mori kind of framed like him falling asleep and deducing cases that he had no memory of. He's like thinking that he's just got his ego, so he's like, oh yeah, that's my true self, and that hasn't come up again. But considering that at least one other person knows the true mind behind Mori, I'm like, when is that guy? What's that? Because Conan's just been keeping all these secrets, and there's so many cases where there's so many, or there's times where like they like Haibara says like, hey, maybe you shouldn't wear the mask, or no, I'm misremembering, but I definitely remember like there's definitely nods that of other people keeping secrets and stuff that just makes you think, Conan, maybe you should, Shinichi, I don't know, just maybe, I don't know. It's because it's like I expect it's gonna backfire in some way, and the story is better the way it is, but it's just that like tragedy is bred by hope, and here's my hope saying, hey, maybe Shinichi won't fuck it up, and he'll just fucking tell people and reveal the truth, because especially so many people at this point know that he's Shinichi that I don't know, whatever. I mean, he has his other reasons for not telling Ron in particular about that, but it's just like, Mori does have a huge ego. How is he going to feel when he finds out that all these cases are being solved by a literal child who, I mean, maybe I don't even think that it being Shinichi and him knowing that would necessarily even alleviate any major feelings that he would have majorly, because, again, he just has that ego. And I mean, but this is all stuff I've been talking about since for a while now. But anyway, I did accidentally spoil myself on Bourbon being a triple agent and with the cops and stuff, because like there was the one case, and I just remember, because I before I read Conan like a year ago or so, I remember hearing some discussion, and I just remember someone offhandedly mentioning something about like the way that the Japanese police, because they kind of have to like end up relying on Conan so much indirectly, that they aren't necessarily the most competent, and you sort of see like Ray has a lot of pride in the police, and like when he was talking to the FBI agents, he was very negative towards them, even as like an undercover he's triple agent, he's appears to be a good guy, like detective studying under Mori, but he's actually in the organization, but he's actually a cop who's out after them, right, so I got spoiled because I remember, I think someone said, oh, Conan, tweeted about the sales, because apparently both Detective Conan and Zero's Tea Time were selling well. I'm like, Zero's Tea Time, I've heard that name before. I'm gonna go look up what that manga is, and I read the description. It's like Triple Agent Ray, and I'm like Zero, and I'm like, oh wait, I didn't know that part yet. Shit. Whoops. So yeah, that happened. I mean, I will say, like, because I mean, I was fine on him in the manga, but I definitely came to appreciate his character more later for reasons I'll go into. But yeah, I guess before I talk about that, there were a couple cases that stood out to me. Is there was I like the flashback one with Shinichi and Ron in kindergarten, where we sort of see them first like meeting really and their first impressions of each other, and then we also see this case involving a potential kidnapper from the perspective of Ron as she is left to be ignorant, and then from Shinichi's perspective where it's like, no, this guy was actually up to something, and he should, it was just neat seeing like how the case was handled from two different perspectives, and then seeing it. I don't know, that was cool. And we got some more good high bar content. Particularly the one that stands out to me is the case where like Yoko was with the soccer player who Haibara likes, and Mori likes Yoko, so they formed a dark pact and unified, and it's like, that's okay, these two really okay. And the one with the charm was also good, where she lost her charm of the soccer player and she was just dead. Like Haibara's she's I don't know, it's really cool how she's like acclimated and she's just showing more of herself. Like, she's still Haibara and just generally like, kind of like emotionally like toned down and distant to a degree, but she has warmed up. She's grown to and then here she is like doing real people things and real, even like almost like a real child, like it's she's good. It was good. I appreciated it. But yeah, as far as like I said earlier, appreciating Amuro is because I mean, like, honestly, like, for just the backlog builder, I would have just caught up to Conan, but there's a part of my head that's like, okay, it's not a lot of reading, and I want to really be caught up to Conan. So I did go read the other manga that are connected to Conan in some way, that are translated. There was another one, I think, called Yaiba that Aoyama did, that and then I guess some characters that I don't remember who showed up in Conan, probably, which, but I started with, or no, I didn't start with it, but I guess the first one I will start with is Magic Kaito, which was really weird going to after Conan, because obviously he started the manga before Detective Conan, and it, like, his art style is pretty different. Like, it's still clearly, like, I recognize, the art style, but it's like, it's weird. It's different, like, tonally, and, it's almost more of a comedy. And it involves this character who, like, especially when he's introduced in Conan, Kaito has like a fair amount of presence. I feel like he felt like a very serious character, and I was kind of curious as to what his deal was when he first showed up. And of course, as I kept reading Conan, like, he was lowered a bit from that, like, and not in a bad way. I more just mean like the way that chapters would end, where like Conan gets one up on him, like, he hits Kaito with a soccer ball as he's retreating. Or there was one, I think it was in this reading, where he like did a heist and like he was at chapters will just end with him in a humorous spot, like he'll be on top of a contraption or hiding waiting for the police to go. Like he just wants to fucking go home, but he can't because the police are still looking for him and stuff like that'll happen. And but reading the Magic Kaito goes even further with that, where he, again, because it's almost more of a comedy, he's just, treat seeing more of him as, just Kaito, the normal ass high school kid. And, it was just a little jarring almost, because it almost doesn't feel like the same character. But, I think it kind of works because, like, that's a younger Kaito in a sense, before he became more experienced with thievery, you could say. Though also, it could just be Aoyama becoming more experienced as a manga. Like, and it was also, like, I guess it takes place in the same setting as Conan, but, like, there was a fucking whole-ass robot in Chapter 3 and one of the later chapters, and then there's a girl who's into Kaito who's, like, Akako, that was her name, she's, like, a fucking witch, basically. Like, there's just straight-up like, super science and magic, in ways that, aren't really in Conan a lot, or at all with the magic. And I say, like, what the only like super science thing I can think of is the drugs and stuff, with obviously Shinichi being aged down into Conan, which small, it's pretty small in comparison to robots and AI and stuff. But of course, well, though it did suck because like the first 3 volumes were that, and then like volume 4 had dog shit scans. And I didn't, because the art looked so bad because of how it was, scanned, I couldn't even tell that it was, oh, he's doing this later, and hey, Shinichi's there. Like, I literally couldn't even tell at first that it was better, basically, because the scans were so bad. So I was like, well, that's unfortunate. And yeah, it was just like, Shinichi showed up. Shinichi showed up. And I guess there was also the other character, I forget their name, but they did show up in the Detective Mansion case way earlier in the manga, and in a couple other instances. But just another high school age detective. He was a rival to Kaito, and it's like, oh, okay. Little connections like that. So yeah, I guess, Magic Kaito is far from a necessary read, but at least, in particular, like the later stuff does connect back to Conan or UC Shinichi. So it's just like, it's there, I guess. But yeah, I guess like, and this will go into the next manga I talk about too, where just like how, because Conan in particular is so very dense with like dialogue and exposition, Kaito being a bit more of a gag manga in a sense, felt really different. And that was also true of Zero's Tea Time, which I also, part of why I mentioned earlier why I have more fondness of Amuro now than I did just from reading Conan, because, I do think the other two manga go into his character more, and it's like, oh yeah, I appreciate him. But yeah, Zero's Tea Time, it's like, I mean, I think both it and Wild Police Story were drawn by someone else who wasn't Aoyama, but because, like, so the art, but I don't know, I guess, because the art in Zero's Tea Time is also just really different because there isn't as much dialogue and deductions and stuff. And you'll still have those moments for sure, but it's also just, Zero just living his day-to-day life and, being like fucking snarky about him having 3 identities and, and there'll be good interactions like the chapters with Camel, where like, there was the one where he, he helped him out. Oh yeah, he gave him like water with salt in it, and because he was dehydrated, and he recognized that, and like because Camel knows that he's bourbon, because Conan knows that he's bourbon, they suspect it, and but Camel doesn't know that he's actually a former Japanese police officer, so like Ray has a reason to support, not have Camel suffer unnecessarily, and also he's just like a nice dude, so they have a funny dynamic with that. For that reason, I guess. But yeah, it's just nice to, it's, again, it's not, or I forget it, because I think it's storyboarded by Aoyama maybe, or was that Wild Police Story? I forget, because Wild Police Story definitely felt like an Aoyama manga, just because of, again, it just has way more dialogue and discuss characters talking and stuff, and the levels of just like deductions and characters being using their brains. And we're with Tea Time is just like a nice, pleasant little read. Wild Police Story goes and here's his backstory, here's all his friends, and some of them we've known from the manga, of course, include and they all fucking died. And I guess there was also the idea that I'm curious about as to if it'll factor into Ray's arc and Conan in some degree. I don't know why I keep switching between like all of the 4 of his names, because like Amuro, Ray, Zero, Bourbon, like I just call him whatever comes to mind, I guess. I don't know. But because like there's just the idea of unity where like there in particular, I remember in the one case there was like the one police officer who, when he was a kid, there was a hostage situation, and he looked down on his dad a bit because his dad was like giving into their demands and not resisting, and he was like, no, a police officer needs to be strong enough to resist and be strong on their own. But then it turned out that actually he was like biding time, and other police officers were coming, and so he got into a similar situation, and biding time and relying on your fellow police officers was the way to go, and they're all kind of dealing with their burdens alone, but they do find unity in the police force. Then they all went off on their own, and all of them except Ray died, and now he's acting alone. So I'm kind of wondering how that general conflict will factor into Ray's character arc in Conan going forward. So that was neat. But yeah, I read those 3 manga because I wanted to. That has nothing to do with the backlog builder, and so you're getting that discussion free, I guess. But I'm caught up with Conan. Feels weird as far as like personal goals. I do want to one day be caught up with all 4 of the shonen magazines, with everything that's being translated and running in the magazine. So now that I've caught up with Conan, that is 2 of the 4,000+ chapter series down. One Piece and Conan down. Baki and Hajime no Ippo to go. But that's unrelated to the backlog builder. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed anything, my general feelings.